58. But, is Jamie online?
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Welcome to the meeting of the Board of Historic Resources. My name is Amy Giorgiani. I'm chair of the Board of Historic Resources, and I hereby call this meeting of the Board of Historic Resources to order. Could Ms. Williams please call the roll in order to determine the board members who are present and to confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes.
Here.
Dr. Biden,
Here.
Mr. Towns,
Here.
Mr. Bosket,
Here.
Hudson, and Chair Giorgiani.
Here. All right, thank you. I'd like to, for each board member present to introduce themselves and to say where they are from, starting with
Me? Yeah. Trip Pollard. I live in Chesterfield County and am vice chair of Board for Preservation of Virginia and head of the Land and Community Program for Southern Environmental Law Center.
My name is Ashley Atkins Spivey. I'm from King William County, Virginia, and I work as an anthropologist, consulting with tribal communities and different institutions and organizations in Virginia.
Yeah. Me? Okay. I'm Martin Towns. I'm from King William, Virginia. I'm the deputy butler at the Executive Mansion, and I'm also the mansion historian.
And as I said earlier, my name is Amy Giorgiani and I'm from Falls Church. Today's meeting is a public meeting. It will be streamed online and that online feed will be recorded. I'd like to again to thank Lynn Swan of the Homestead for being our host today, Lee Elliott of Preservation Bath, and the great hospitality that we've received here and for this venue. The board is charged primarily with the responsibility for designating historic landmarks of local, statewide, or national significance. The board establishes historic preservation practices for the care and management of our Virginia historic landmarks. We designate state-recognized historic districts and archaeological sites and zones, approve highway markers, review programs and services of the department, and making recommendations to the director of the department and the governor regarding programs and services. And finally, in order to preserve important sites and buildings in perpetuity, accepting voluntarily granted gifts of preservation easements over historic properties to the Commonwealth. The governor of Virginia selects members of the board from volunteer and professional leaders of Virginia's history, preservation, and museum communities. I apologize. I did forget to mention and have Mr. Basket introduce himself.
No worries. Jamie Bosket. I am in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm the president and CEO of the State History Museum, the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you so much. Votes taken during this meeting are official actions of the Commonwealth of Virginia Board of Historic Resources. So we just introduced ourselves. So I believe we have a quorum in today's meeting, including Mr. Basket, who's listening in virtually and voting. We will also have some members of the public here today with us and also joining virtually. This is a public meeting and will be streamed online, and that online will be recorded. Board members, the format of today's meeting has been noted, and you also have a final agenda was on the table today. Are there any questions or comments from the board on the format or the agenda? If none, could I have a motion to approve the format of our agenda for today's meeting?
So moved. Ashley Spivey, so moved.
And can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approval of the of the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Everyone. Those opposed? None. The meeting agenda is approved. So I'd like to read the Board of Historic Resources introduction. The Virginia Board is the official policy-making board of the Commonwealth of Virginia, created by the Code of Virginia. Its policies are implemented by the Department of Historic Resources, which today which day in and day out labors on behalf of our irreplaceable resources in the interest of the citizens of the Commonwealth. So I would like to request a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, from our June 20th meeting. Did all that for that? That was all from the earlier meeting that comprised both the morning and the afternoon sessions. Okay, great. So this next, I'd like to do the statement on public participation. Okay, great. There's a statement of public participation at Virginia Board of Historic Resources review meetings. The Virginia Board desires to hear the viewpoints of interested citizens, but also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. Therefore, the next portion of the meeting provides an opportunity for general public to identify matters of interest and concern. While the public is welcome to express any concerns that they may have, the board is not in position to comment or respond. The Virginia Board of Historic Resources during this part of the meeting is to listen and potentially provide direction to staff for follow-up, and not to formally respond to speakers or take official action on matters presented. If matters broached during the public comment portion of the agenda seem to warrant board attention and discussion and are within the board's authority, then those matters may be taken up as a formal agenda item at subsequent board meetings. In consideration of the time constraints associated with regular board agenda items, speakers, including the public during the public comment period, are requested to limit their presentation to a maximum of 3 minutes. Upon recognition by the chair, we ask that speakers clearly state their name and then directly address their comments to the board. As a reminder, board members will not officially respond to speakers nor take action on matters presented that are not already part of the agenda. And again, a reminder to keep the responses to 3 minutes. And now have the deputy director call on folks who have been signed.
Actually, one gentleman that's signed up in person here today.
That's great.
I'd like to.
Recognize it. Okay, Mr. Glenn. Yeah, Mr. Glenn Gwynn, I believe you are here. Thank you for coming in person. And do we have a microphone set? Thank you.
You're Glenn Gwynn, part-time resident of Glens Island since 2005, full-time resident since 2015. Last year at the Danville meeting, a gentleman traveled similarly and was given 5 minutes, and I was going to ask the board's indulgence. I don't think I'll need to speak 5 minutes, but I'm speaking for several people that could not be here today. And I'll say that the handout that I gave you, I'm not going to read this handout. I received additional information yesterday that I'll go into, but it is I have 5 minutes, but
Oh, sorry. If you need 5 minutes and you're here, go ahead.
first of all, I'm opposed to sign to the marker. Reason being, there are 0 primary sources that prove the statements on the marker, other than the census data that's assumed to be correct. And I want to talk about each sentence on the marker and then provide some additional information. So the first 2 we assume to be factual because migration did occur and population changed. Item number 3, some may have left for economic reasons, but the primary cause of the exodus was racial tension that occurred following that December 19 fracas. There's no evidence that that occurred. There's no primary sources that link that to migration of a racial nature. Between 1910 and 1920, the Black population of Matthews County decreased by approximately 1,500. Approximately 130 of those individuals were from Glens Island. Does that mean that 350, almost 400 Blacks were excluded from the rest of Matthews County? No, I don't believe so. Economic survival was in play, and there was good reason for that. The comments could not be given last year. Get to that. Subsequent threats against Black residents led them to fear for their safety. Again, there's no primary or contemporaneous evidence of this. And the website that's been put up for this, and I'm going to avoid using names because I read the rules beforehand, so I don't like to talk about people. I try to talk about information. All this information I wrote. I didn't get input from people and listen to people. I did the research myself. So looking on the WordPress site, which is titled How Wins Island Became a White Man's Paradise, you Google that term. It's a term that was used in a newspaper article back in the 20s, and it's an unfortunate, ugly term that we would not use today in this room. However, if you Google it, it is used to describe Russia, New Zealand, the Western United States when it was being settled. Surprisingly, Gianni Beach, Kenya currently is known as a white man's paradise. Unfortunate. Even Glassdoor, where you raise your employer, has people talking about certain businesses as beginning that type of thing. That's all very unfortunate. Now, writing on this website, the publisher says they provide information for the reader to get their own opinion. However, the next statement is, no firsthand accounts existed, only the stories of white descendants with much to hide. That's a fairly pejorative comment. Doesn't need to be there. Following it on Woods Island, a little bit of positive news. No one was killed, no homes were burned down, but the community fled all the same. That's what I call a backhanded compliment. Oh yeah, you didn't do this, but still. Well, there are no sources that support fleeing. However, there is stuff that supports economic survival quite a bit. Very ironically, the question, if one were to face threats of violence, if I was to face threats of violence for my family, I'd be taking action immediately. Things will be done. We'd be gone. But ironically, one of the individuals that was involved in this practice, who's mentioned in the judge's note to the trial, did not leave the island until September of 1920, 4.5 years later. That's quoted in a book on Black Americans in Woods Island, written by a Woods Islander, and it was in the newspaper.
You could do one more minute, be great.
Sorry?
One more minute would be great.
Next, why did they leave? Again, quoting the website, there's no first-hand accounts, only stories passed down by both communities. Stories passed down don't meet the DHR marker criteria of facts. Black-owned land supposedly sold under pressure. All the land sales between the website says black-owned land appears to have been legally sold between 1916 and 1925. And in fact, if you look at the sales, sold to a black family or person, price was here. Sold to a white individuals here. Pricing power existed, and there's no evidence I've seen of any economic below market sales. So the final statement, this DHR process is about facts and things that have regional and wide applicability. And adding a Jim Crow item in there, the only reason to add that statement is to give cover to that wide applicability. Say, one can say, oh, what meets the criteria? But in fact, you could just as easily say a war was fought, 500,000 people died to eliminate slavery. We passed legislation that did that, and that's a positive thing. But again, that doesn't relate directly to one's off. Finally, the economic stuff, the little table there, inflation took off. One started in number of 15, a year and a half later, this incident happened. At the time, John Dixon talks about the economic stress the county was under in Gloucester. Industrial jobs were taking off and drawing people to make a real living off of the island. No bridge. One could not commute to Gloucester for Newport News and have employment. It just couldn't happen. So people did what I did when I was 18 years old.
Okay, we're at 6 minutes now, so.
So the only healing for this, the only thing that will change this, we're just codifying that sign up. And the only thing that will fix it is the proofs that can be found in the book we call the Holy Bible. God bless y'all. Thank you for listening to me.
All right, thank you for coming in person to make your statements. Is there anyone online?
No one else in person. We have
Oh.
Good afternoon. I'll
My name is Stephanie Williams. I'm Deputy Director of the department, and I will be administering the virtual public comment participation. We have 9 folks signed up to speak today, and the first of those is a Philip Thompson, who I believe I have seen online. Mr. Thompson, you may now unmute your mic and begin your comments.
Thank you. My name is Philip Thompson. I live in Loudoun County, Virginia. I am the former president of the Loudoun County NAACP. I, along with the NAACP, started the process of getting what we had at that point 3 lynching sites in the Loudoun County, historical markers placed on those sites. We had one site that had a historical marker placed by the Virginia Department of Parks in Northern Virginia because it was on their land near the WOND. We're now seeking approval of the Craven site for Mr. Craven, who was lynched in Leesburg, Virginia. The NAACP, under my leadership as former president and under the leadership of Pastor Michelle Thomas, the current president, has been working with the town of Leesburg for a number of years to get this marker sited. We got a little slowed up during COVID, but we're back on track. We appreciate all the work that this office has done and the staff has done, not just with Leesburg, the town of Leesburg, but also with the Department of Historical Resources to push this, to get this site before you. We hope that you can approve this historical marker. This is an important event in Loudoun County. This gentleman was snatched from a jail, as were all 3 of the lynching sites. The individuals that were lynched, they were all taken from law enforcement in some manner and brought to a what was at that time a pauper cemetery, where he was lynched and he was hung and shot and killed. There was a trial, or at least an inquest, like in all 3 of the instances, but in each instance, no one was ever convicted of this crime, despite the fact that 300 plus people were purported to have watched this lynching occur. So we think it's very important to remember these 3 lynching sites. I personally got started in this process because in the state of Virginia, there's a lot of historical markers dealing with the Confederate participation in the Civil War. And it seemed to me that everybody seemed to forgot that after the Civil War, the number one audience participation sport was lynching of African Americans, of which purportedly over 80 were lynched in the Commonwealth of Virginia after the Civil War up until the 1940s. So we appreciate this office's effort. We're going to be pushing legislation to have a commission established to identify all 80 something or 90 lynchings in the Commonwealth and have historical markers hopefully placed at each one of those sites so that people can remember these horrific crimes. Again, I appreciate the work that's been done and hope that this site can get approved and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. The next registrant is Allison Thomas. Ms. Thomas, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. Ms. Thomas, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. All right, I will move to the next registrant. Ms. Thomas, I'll come back to you at the end to see if you can get your mic enabled. The next registrant is Barbara Bergman. Who I do not see as an attendee. I will move to the next registrant, who is Steve Russell. Dee Russell, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. You may unmute your mic
I'm
and
sorry.
begin your comments.
I
There you
found
go.
it. I was looking at
Thank
the
you.
bottom, but it was at the top. My apologies. Good afternoon. My name is Dee Russell, and I reside at 276 Yeiser Lane in Hudgens, Virginia. I fully support the proposed historical marker to be placed on Gwen's Island. So many people in our small community talk about not wanting to erase history, yet there are a very small handful of these very same people who seems to be against this marker. I have heard it referred to as a diversity marker because the Matthews branch of the NAACP sponsored it. The idea for this marker came from both Black and white members of the Black families who are no longer on the island. These family members are tied together through DNA, and all they want is to share a part of their collective history, which took place on Gwen's Island. I personally think it is a step forward for this community that many Matthews citizens are proud that we can acknowledge uncomfortable history and what is painful to other people. I can't speak for anyone else but myself, as no one else can speak for the board or other citizens that are not here today to speak for themselves. I cannot imagine why anyone who reads this historical marker would walk away thinking that all of the citizens of Matthews or Gwen's Island are racist, which has also been said. In fact, it does the opposite. It is expressing, it's a history marker for all of county history. This marker has gone through several reiterations to make this marker more palatable for some of the citizens of Matthews. I am sure many of you in the preservation world are familiar with Martha McCartney and her incredible reputation in historical research. Ms. McCartney has been an integral part of all of the research for this marker and the various reiterations. Knowing her reputation, I have complete faith that this marker has been properly vetted and it meets all of the requirements of Preservation Virginia. And I hope that this board will also support this marker. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gail Turner. Ms. Turner, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. Ms. Turner, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Gail Turner, and I am the first cousin once removed of Bruce Oliver Tucker and the family representative. On behalf of the Tucker family, we thank you for considering the historical marker application submitted by VCU. This marker represents, acknowledges, and honors our beloved Bruce, his contributions to medical science and heart transplantation in Virginia. We sincerely appreciate the opportunity to offer this comment. This year, the General Assembly unanimously passed a resolution to recognize, realize, and apologize for past wrongs to assure they never happen again. This marker, if approved, will educate and inform many Virginians of the contributions of Bruce Tucker to medical science and heart transplantation. It will offer truth-telling of a time of a racist system that devalued his life and did not acknowledge or treat him as human. His sacrifice benefited science, mankind, provided prestige, possibilities, and tangible benefits for MCV. Bruce, to those of us who knew and loved him, was a tall, handsome man with a raspy voice and brownish gray eyes. He had a broad smile and always a warm embrace. He was a responsible father. He was his parents' eldest child. He loved his family, and he was a big brother. He was a favorite and beloved nephew, a reliable, committed, and competent employee, a loyal and fun-loving friend, good-natured, good-humored, and he had a great work ethic. He had a love for family and country, a man who was a good citizen and contributed to society, a loyal employee for more than 25 years at the same company, a man who at the age of 25 registered for selective service in World War II, a man who came from a family of hardworking people and entrepreneurs. Certainly, Richmond was a different place 56 years ago, but on this day, our family is extremely hopeful that a historical marker honoring his contributions to medicine will be approved and located in a reasonable proximity to his childhood home and burial site in Dinwiddie, Virginia. Many who knew him in his youth and young adult life in Stony Creek never really knew what happened to him. He is a hidden figure in Virginia and the nation's medical history. We thank you for your consideration. Today, we are grateful for the life of Bruce Oliver Tucker and his humanity, and for your consideration for a favorable placement of this marker. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Judy Rowe. Ms. Rowe, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments.
Hi. Yes, this is Judy Rowe. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am a resident of Gwynns Island for the last 58 years. I want to speak towards the highway marker that is due to go to Gwynns Island. I have no problem with reporting the history of what happened. That is perfectly all right with me, and I think with many of the citizens of Gwynns Island. However, you have to realize what this does to Gwynns Island in some of the way this is worded. Gwynns Island is a finite piece of land. You don't find that in many places. But this makes everything different that affects Gwynns Island. There's one way on and off the island. We are a very finite community. And with this marker, as I'm told, it's going to be put just as you cross the bridge to Gwynns Island. This marks us and puts us in a present day situation of basically calling us racist, that the whole island is that way. That's not true. It's not true. And I really object to the tone of this marker. I know it's been rewritten several times, but I think you need to look at it again. There's still some remarks. The first gentleman that spoke certainly addressed some of those issues. And I feel very passionately that this is inflammatory language that brands those of us today that live there. Of course, no one is alive today when this incident happened. I hope you will reconsider and look at the language again, because I think what you're doing is labeling a community. And again, because we are an island, it has a different effect in what you want to do. So I suggest that you take another look. At this time, I want to tell you that Barbara Bergman is on the device with me. So I would like for you to give her a chance to speak as well.
Thank you. Ms. Bergman, you may have 3 minutes.
Yes, I also want to speak my piece about the history of Gwynns Island is not just what's on that marker. There's a lot of other history too. I have no objection to you talking about that, but you did not incorporate any other history of Gwynns Island, which I think is a real shame. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Pastor Thomas. Pastor Thomas, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. Pastor Thomas, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. All right, I'll move to the next registrant and come back to see if you have resolved your microphone issues. Next registrant is Edith Turner. Ms. Turner, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. Ms. Turner, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. All right, I'll move on to our final registrant for today. This is Elsie Williams.
I'm sorry. My mic wouldn't unmute. It's Edith Turner.
Yes, go ahead.
It wouldn't unmute. I'm so sorry.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I'm Edith Turner and I live in Matthews County and have lived there most of my life. I'm speaking on behalf of quite a few members in the county and also the Matthews branch of the NAACP. I'm the president of that branch and we are sponsoring this marker. I am in favor of this marker, of course. Prior to 1921, the Black community on Gwynns Island had its own church, its own school, made up quite a bit of the population, and many were landowners. Thank you all for vetting the research that we sent to you. It's not just stuff that was made up. I mean, it's been vetted and it's been looked at several times. There are quite a few people who want to deny history, who want to suppress history, and want to rewrite history. It seems to me, from living in this county, that so many are okay with the 50-foot Confederate flags. They're okay with a group of Confederate statues that line right down Main Street, statues of Confederate officers from the Civil War and even a current insurrectionist, but have a problem with the telling of history as it happened so many years ago. Not a reflection on anyone today, not a reflection on anything that's happening today, we hope, but a reflection and to think about things that happened in the past. We feel it's time to acknowledge this history and the achievements of this community of Black families who were unceremoniously driven off of Gwynns Island by threats of intimidation. And we want to continue our efforts to preserve and promote our local history. And we are grateful for your diligence in making sure that what we've done here is just that, it preserves history. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now move to Ms. Elsie Williams. Ms. Williams, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. Ms. Williams, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. All right, I will start back at the top of the list and see if we can connect with those that were having trouble before. Ms. Thomas, Ms. Allison Thomas, are you able to unmute your mic?
Yes, I am.
Great.
I'm sorry. Clicking on a microphone on my window, not realizing it's at the top of the screen, which I think is.
I understand. You may begin.
I first of all would like to thank the staff and the board for their time, effort, and professionalism in helping us craft this marker, fitting this history into 120 words and staying true to the facts is a difficult task. My third grade grandparents were enslavers of some of the Black families on Gwynns Island, and that's how I am connected to this story, even though I do not live there. I had a cousin who testified in the trial in January of 1916, and many cousins who live there today. I have spent 6 years researching this history. and I've been honored to work with the Black descendants of Gwynns Island and the NAACP on this marker. It's been vetted extensively. Every line and every phrase has been footnoted, and I presume the board has that information. We have strong local support for the marker, and a year ago at the first hearing that we had, there were almost 30 letters of support sent. And I would like to summarize and represent some of our supporters. Tom Edwards, the president of the Gwynns Island Museum, wrote, "This event happened as written. It is accurate history. We are definitely not proud of what happened, but we need not be afraid to read and to remember the impact of the foolish act done 109 years ago." Rufus Frazier, who's one of our committee members, has written, "The marker project is he's a descendant of people who lived on the island. The marker project is very important to me, and my entire family and I have been working diligently to develop the wording for this marker. I believe that the time has come to share this true history with the rest of Virginia and the world. I do not agree that those who currently own the land have a right to dictate what they want known about the island." Some other residents, Chris Bridge, "This is a story that needs to be told. Please help Matthews citizens understand our past so that we may work for a better future." Courtney Sterling, "Both sides of my family trace back to the island, and I live at the original Sterling home site. I ran both post offices. Placing this marker is a necessary step in the right direction. Matthews County has a very vocal segment that opposes any and all steps forward in regard to history. I hope they will not deter recognizing and honoring the long and varied history of a place I know and love." Bob Davidson, who's one of my cousins, "Our marker proposal should not be seen as accusing or disrespecting any current residents of Matthews County or Gwynns Island. I invite all of my island cousins to celebrate the positive contributions of our ancestors and to join me in seeking racial reconciliation and embracing our shared pursuit of the common good." In closing, I would like to say that I feel strongly that a marker would both commemorate a community whose existence was erased, as well as call attention to the fact that these types of communities were erased throughout the Jim Crow period in Virginia and the rest of the South, and actually much of the United States. Acknowledging true events is the first step toward healing the harm caused by a misguided segment of the population. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move again to Pastor Thomas. Pastor Thomas, are you able to unmute your mic?
Yes.
Great. You
Yes,
may begin your
ma'am.
comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. All right. I'm Pastor Michelle C. Thomas. I'm the president of the NAACP, current president of the NAACP Loudoun branch. I'm also the founder and CEO of the Loudoun Freedom Center, which is a historic preservation group that's designed and dedicated to preserving, protecting, and promoting African American history in Loudoun County. We are so absolutely proud and grateful for this board and the way the process has worked. We ran into several issues trying to do the historic marker of the lynching site. There have been 3 documented lynchings in Loudoun County, and only one of those lynchings have been recorded in the public view, and that is only through an interpretive sign. The NAACP Loudoun branch led that effort along with the research group, which is the Loudoun Freedom Center. We have partnered again to do the next victim, but this time we wanted to do the historic marker. Or I'm sorry, the highway marker. And we were faced with the process of going through EGI. EGI was just not equipped to take care of us. And literally, we were dropped. It was like, there's nothing else you can do. This is the process given by the government for all lynching sites. And somehow, you guys really have stepped up, and we're able to share the process going forward with other municipalities and other areas that would like to have their lynching stories told. One of the common themes of the lynching, as we were able to do the research, is that justice had never happened. These lynchings were as a matter of vigilante justice, but justice for the family in terms of really understanding what happened, understanding from the law enforcement perspective what happened. A lot of the lynchings took place with someone overthrowing the jails, the guards, the sheriffs on duty. It just really tells a story of complacency or complicitness. And so it's important to get this history out there. It's important for the descendants to heal. It's important for us to show other cities and counties and descendant groups how to document this history. In a way that is never forgotten. And so we couldn't not have done that without the help of Jennifer Lux and Whitney Hughes and Loudon and in Leesburg and all those who have made this process a little easier for us, just being clear on the requirements. The last thing I'd like to mention is the fact that research was not done for us. We did our own research, and I appreciate the way that the process allowed us to do the research. Whenever there was an instance where there's some areas that needed to be flushed out, I appreciate the respect that your researchers gave us and the time that they gave us to do and work through this hard history ourselves. It is important that the descendants' voice is heard all throughout the entire process, and then certainly in terms of every language. While our ancestors were not respected during their time, the greatest form of respect and freedom is being able to document their stories. So thank you so much, and I appreciate if you could approve the Lynch Memorial, which will be a beacon of hope for everyone else that needs to follow in the county and in Northern Virginia.
Thank you so much. And moving to our last registrant is Elsie Williams. Ms. Williams, you may unmute your mic and begin your comments. Ms. Williams. All right. That concludes our virtual public comment today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I would like to note message or emails, comments we received from Mike Walls, Mr. Tyrone Hudgens, and Mr. David Callis. That was also shared with the board related to the Gwynns Island marker. All three were appear to be opposing the marker.
Things that arrived recently.
Okay, so I'd like to thank all those who spoke during today's public comment period. Your comments are valued, and we stress the importance of citizen involvement in the proceedings of these boards. They will receive careful consideration by our board. This concludes the public comment portion of today's meeting.
Janice. Mike is unmuted. Okay. She should be able to begin. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Jennifer Lukes. I am the Highway Marker Program Manager at the Department of Historic Resources, and I'll be presenting the Highway Marker agenda for today's meeting. We'll start off with our 9 new markers that will be under consideration. The Marker Editorial Committee for DHR approved these marker texts as well as the replacement marker text at their meeting on August 29th. First, we have North Pamunkey Baptist Church in Orange County. Baptist ministers Elijah Craig and Aaron Bledsoe organized this congregation in 1774 as their denomination was growing in Virginia. Both of these men, by the way, had previously been arrested for preaching without the permission of the established Church of England. They and others in the community petitioned for religious freedom during the Revolutionary War, while also providing support for the Patriot cause. Bledsoe, pastor at the church for 32 years, was one of several prominent local Baptists whose political support James Madison won in the 1780s by promising to secure religious liberty. The present sanctuary was completed in the 1850s. Many enslaved people were members of the church before the Civil War, but departed after emancipation. Next up is the Field Brothers of the Lewis and Clark expedition. This marker would be erected in Culpeper County. Brothers Joseph Field and Reuben Field were highly valued members of the Lewis and Clark expedition to the Pacific Ocean. Both were born in Culpeper County, probably by 1782, and their family relocated to what is now Kentucky in the fall of 1784. Known as skilled woodsmen and hunters, they were among the first 3 men that William Clark recruited for the expedition to the West. In 1807, Meriwether Lewis noted that the Field brothers had been, quote, engaged in all the most dangerous and difficult scenes of the voyage, in which they uniformly acquitted themselves with much honor. Third Street Bethel AME Church in the city of Richmond. This congregation, formed by 11 free African American Methodists about 1850, built its sanctuary circa 1856. In May 1867, the church joined the Virginia Annual Conference of the African Methodist Episcopal Church at its organizational meeting, which was held at this church, and became known as Third Street Bethel. Civic groups, mutual aid societies, and other organizations that were devoted to civil rights and community uplift met there regularly to educate and to organize. On August 20th, 1901, Maggie L. Walker spoke there and announced her plan to establish a bank, newspaper, and emporium. Third Street Bethel was listed on the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register of Historic Places in 1975. And next we have the Stewart sisters versus the steamer Sioux, and this is for Westmoreland County. On August 15, 1884, Virginia-born sisters Martha and Winnie Stewart, Mary Johnson, and Lucy Jones were denied first-class quarters because of their race when traveling on the steamer Sioux from Baltimore to visit family in Kinsale. With support from the Reverend Harvey Johnson, who was their pastor in Baltimore, they filed suit in federal court, asserting that segregated quarters were illegal and that the Sioux were unequal. The trial court ruled that segregation was reasonable, but it awarded the sisters $100 each because the quarters were unequal. And this decision was affirmed on appeal. The case, one of many brought by Black women in the late 1800s, was an impetus for the creation of the Mutual United Brotherhood of Liberty, which was a forerunner of the NAACP. Charles Craven lynched on July 31st, 1902. This is the town of Leesburg. Charles Craven, a Black man about 25 years old, was lynched near Leesburg in July 1902. Accused of murdering a white man, Craven was being held at the Leesburg jail. Soon after his arrest, a mob of 300 to 500 men formed outside the jail. Fearing violence, the sheriff requested that the governor deploy militia troops to Leesburg. But before the troops could arrive, the mob stormed the jail, overwhelmed the deputies, seized Craven, beat him, and took him a half a mile to the lynching site And this is where he was hanged and shot hundreds of times. Craven proclaimed his innocence until his death. Despite many eyewitnesses and several arrests, no one was ever brought to justice, as with most lynchings in the Jim Crow South. Next is Black Exodus from Gwynns Island, Matthews County. In 1910, Gwynns Island was home to 135 Black residents, which was 17% of the population, many of them landowners. This community, which likely originated in the 1600s, had its own church and school, yet by 1921, all Black citizens had departed, and most of them had actually left by the summer of 1916. Some may have left for economic reasons, but the primary cause of the exodus was racial tension that followed a December 1915 fight among Black and white men. Subsequent threats against Black residents led them to fear for their safety. They left, selling their property under pressure and losing their community and the institutions that they had built. During the Jim Crow era, threats and violence drove many Black families from localities across the U.S. Next is resilience amid resistance in the city of Harrisonburg. In July 1956, which was 2 years after the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in the Brown versus Board of Education case, federal judge John Paul of Harrisonburg issued the first school desegregation order in Virginia, ruling for the NAACP in a suit against Charlottesville City Public Schools. In September 1958, after 2 years of appeals in that Charlottesville case, Paul also sided with the NAACP in a suit against Warren County Public Schools. In response, Governor J. Lindsay Almond closed the schools that were slated to admit the Black student plaintiffs in both of these cases. This was the first use of the state's massive resistance laws to shutter public schools. The Virginia Supreme Court and a special federal court declared the closures unconstitutional in January of 1959. Next, the birthplace of modern Mountain Dew in the town of Marion. William H. Bill Jones of Marion, who's pictured here, played a pivotal role in the development of Mountain Dew, one of the top-selling sodas in the United States. The drink originated as a clear lemon lime beverage in Knoxville, Tennessee in the 1940s, and bottlers in Johnson City, Tennessee, and Lumberton, North Carolina, were among those who distributed early versions. In 1957, Jones became president of Marion's Tip Corporation, and Tip, which was a formulator of flavors for soft drinks, acquired the trademark for Mountain Dew. After Jones refined the drink's formula about 1961, in part by conducting taste tests with Marion residents, sales quickly increased and distribution expanded. The Pepsi-Cola company purchased Tip Corporation and the Mountain Dew trademark in 1964. Next is Bruce Oliver Tucker, 1913 to 1968 in Dinwiddie County. Bruce Tucker, an African-American man and oldest son of Spencer and Emma Tucker, grew up in Dinwiddie County and is buried at Little Bethel Church. On May 24th, 1968, Tucker suffered a head injury from a fall while he was working in Richmond. Physicians at the Medical College of Virginia, later VCU Health, declared him dead on May 25th. Without the consent or knowledge of Tucker's family, surgeons removed his heart and kidneys with a medical examiner's permission and placed his heart into a white man in Virginia's first and the world's 16th cardiac transplant. Tucker's brother William filed a wrongful death lawsuit. The jury, instructed to consider the concept of brain death, despite its absence from the Code of Virginia at that time, found for the defendants in 1972. And that concludes our 9 new markers that are presented for the board's consideration. And we now ask for the board's vote on that group.
Are there any changes to the board and or questions related to the highway markers as presented?
No questions, but I wouldn't have a comment
Yes.
on the Quinns Island marker. Obviously, some very strong opinions on this proposed marker, and I greatly appreciate the public comments that we've received. This application was submitted a couple of years ago. It's been through rather extensive revisions and extensive review by staff. In fact, it's received more review than any marker proposal I'm aware of. And I wish there had been complete consensus on this marker, but that is not always possible. I completely agree with the statement of one of the public witnesses today that there's a lot of other history to Quinns Island. But this is the marker that was brought to this board. We don't institute markers on our own, and I would love to see some markers come forward from Quinns Island about the many positive things that have happened there. I also heard the concern about this making current residents appear to be racist, and I've read and reread this language many, many times, and I just don't see that since it doesn't refer to anything that happened more recently than 100 years ago. So I think this application has followed all of the board's processes, been thoroughly vetted by staff, and it meets the statutory requirements for markers, and I will therefore vote in support of it.
Thank you. Any other comments by board members? Mr. Baskett, who's online.
No comment or question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Trip, for your comments. That's a great summary of that. I do encourage, all folks in the state to, to kind of, put forth other ideas for historic markers to speak more to local history and especially the folks on Quinns Island and throughout the state too, as we approach our semi-quincentennial commemoration. So thank you very much.
I'm going to make a comment.
Yes,
because I feel like I have to. Okay. Sorry. This is
Spivey.
Yes. Sorry. This is Ashley Spivey. I just, in listening to the public comments, and I also sit on the editorial committee for the marker program too as well. So I've been familiar with the process that's been going on. But, I consider myself a historian of state history, especially when it comes to my own community. I'm a member of the Pamunkey Indian tribe, and I also consider myself a member of the wider Virginia Indian community. And I just want to make a comment about this idea that the drive for movement of communities of color from their communities being economic, that's not untrue, but that economic movement or catalyst is not mutually exclusive from what was also happening at the time, that is Jim Crow segregation and eugenics. Those things were intertwined in many ways and forms, where maybe there was economic opportunity prior to the kind of, the height of the eugenics movement and Jim Crow segregation, which are intertwined. But those became intertwined in many ways with economic opportunities that were no longer made available to people of color during that time. So I just want to make a comment that those things are not mutually exclusive and should not be seen as such in the context of the Quinns Islands history. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to request a motion to approve the highway markers as presented today that have all gone through this process.
Okay, so moved. By Ashley Spivey.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Trip Pollard, second. So all in favor of approving the highway markers as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Aye. Then opposed, the highway markers are approved as presented.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is that we have 4 replacement markers for the board's consideration today. Our practice is not to go over these in detail individually, but board members have had a chance to review the updated text in their packets. So we now ask for the board's vote on these 4 replacement markers.
Is there
I'll make a motion.
yeah, we're not reading or looking at them at all. They're okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, so Ashley Spivey, I will make a motion to accept the 4 replacement markers as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Towns. All in favor of approving the replacement markers as noted?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. The replacement markers as presented are approved.
Okay, next up are the applications under consideration for the December board cycle. DHR received 14 applications at the last deadline, and our scoring committee reviewed them in accordance with the procedures outlined on our application form. Based on the scores that each project receives, our committee recommends that the board approve the projects numbered here as 1 through 7 and designate numbers 8 and 9 as alternates.
And just for clarification, the 9 through 14, potentially the spring meeting, the following meeting, or they just, you see what's received and then they get ranked again?
So 10 through 14 would need to reapply if they'd like to be reconsidered at a upcoming meeting.
Reapply, okay. All right, do I have a motion to put forward numbers 1 through 7 with 8 and 9 as alternate as applications for consideration for the December board meeting?
So moved.
Dr. Spivey. Actually, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Towns, thank you. All in favor for putting forth these applications 1 through 7 for consideration?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. That is approved. This 1 through 7 for the consideration of the December board cycle.
Okay, thank you. So at the December board meeting, presumably we'll be presenting text for these 7 markers at that time. Next up, we have some non-DHR signs to consider. We could advance the slide on over to those. Okay, so first we have the Lafayette Trail. And this one would be placed in Fluvanna County. And just to remind the board that you're considering this project under the section of the Code of Virginia that you see here, which requires BHR approval of any historical signage that is placed on public property. And as a reminder, the board approved the design of these Lafayette Trail markers back in March. So today we don't need to approve the design, but this is what they look like. And here's the text of the one that's up for consideration today. And DHR staff has reviewed this text and found it to be supported by primary sources. So we now ask the board for approval.
Motion to approve.
There. Can we lump the other two, or should we lump it together with the next one for the Northern Virginia Regional Commission and votes? Separately. Keep it separate. Okay. All right. Is there a motion? I have a motion here for Mr. Towns on the approval of the Lafayette Marker Trail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second with Tripp. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, the marker is approved.
All right, and next we'll be looking at 2 signs proposed by the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, or NVRC. Reviewing these under the same section of code that we just saw a moment ago. And here the board is being asked to approve both the design and the content of these signs, since the design has not yet come before the board. With regard to the design, the board just needs to affirm that these signs will look sufficiently different from the state highway markers in a manner that no one could confuse one for the other. And so here we see the first one under consideration, which is about economic development in Occoquan and its dependence on enslaved people. This is clearly different in design from our markers, and it would be it's going to be installed at kind of waist height on 2 posts, similar to the way the Civil War trails markers look. And next slide is going to be a little bit better view of it. And then the second one for this program is going to be about Basil Newman Riverfront Park. Here you can see the comparison to the state marker and that it is different in appearance. DHR staff verified that the information presented on both of these signs is supported by primary sources and published research. And so we ask the board for approval of these 2 signs.
Since this is the first time we've seen this new signage from the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, does anybody on the board have any comments or questions related to that? No, no. Okay. Is there a motion to approve these particular 2 markers and this design as presented?
I move to approve both the design of these markers and the text of these 2 markers.
Thank you, Mr.
Tripp
Pollard. Is there a second?
Ashley Spivey, second.
Great, thank you. All in favor of approving the these new markers as presented, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? No. So these particular, this Northern Virginia Regional Commission signs, both signs and design are approved as presented.
Thank you. And that concludes the highway marker agenda for this meeting.
Thank you. The next we've got
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm Wendy Musumeci, and today I'm going to be presenting 2 projects, the first of which is an easement assignment request associated with Phase 2 of the recently opened Culpeper Battlefield State Park in Culpeper County. The proposed assignment concerns an existing easement over a property known as the Wiseman Tract. However, since we have some new board members, especially, and before I get into any details about the Wiseman Tract, I wanted to just briefly provide some background information about the park and its development. Virginia's fiscal year 23-24 budget contained a provision for establishment of Culpeper Battlefield State Park, and it stipulated that the Department of Conservation and Recreation has to accept donation of at least 1,700 acres of property in Culpeper County to form the park. And another stipulation of the legislation is that both the Department of Historic Resources and the Virginia Outdoors Foundation have to assign any easements they hold on associated acreage to the Department of Conservation and Recreation. The park is comprised of discontinuous areas in the Culpeper vicinity, and it's associated with multiple Civil War battles such as Brandy Station, Cedar Mountain, Rappahannock Station, Kelly's Ford, and the Hansborough Ridge Winter Encampment Site. and DCR's acquisition of lands for the park will occur over multiple phases and years. So phase one of the project, some of you may recall, we just completed in June 2024, and that phase incorporated sections of the Brandy Station battlefield. As a result of this phase, 6 existing easements held by the board were combined and amended into a new deed of assignment, restatement, amendment, and consolidation of historic preservation and open space easements. Don't try to say that 10 times fast. This amended easement was recorded on June 6th, and it protects roughly 168 acres, and it's co-held by the board and the Department of Conservation and Recreation. And on the map on this slide, the parcels highlighted in green depict the properties that were included in phase one, and those are also the properties that are now open to the public as part of the park. DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, intends to acquire lands on Cedar Mountain Battlefield for phase 2 of the park's development. And for those of you not familiar, Cedar Mountain is just southwest of that Brandy Station unit that we just saw on the map. Phase 2 of the park's development incorporates 7 properties within the boundaries of the Cedar Mountain Battlefield. Of these, 5, which are shown on the list there, the first 5 are currently subject to historic preservation and open space easements held by the board. At a future meeting, we intend to present for your approval the assignment, consolidation, and amendment of easement for all 7 of these properties listed on this slide. However, today we're just going to focus on the first step of the process, which is to ask the board to accept assignment of an existing open space easement that is currently held by the Virginia Outdoors Foundation on this 155-acre Wiseman tract. This is the only easement that is held by the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and to facilitate the process of eventually combining all these easements together and co-holding with DCR, VOF has agreed to assign this easement to our board, and then we will work with DCR when we do that combined, amended, and consolidated easement. Once the deed assigning the easement from VOF to the board is recorded, we'll continue with the remaining components of phase 2, including asking for your approval to consolidate, assign, and amend the existing and new easements, drafting the deed, and completing our due diligence process. Similarly to phase 1, this will require coordination between DHR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the American Battlefield Trust, as well as other project partners. DCR has set a date of August 9th, 2025 for the grand opening of this new Cedar Mountain unit. Since we will be asking today only for your approval of the Wiseman Tract easement assignment, I wanted to share just a few details about this property with you. It's located just southwest of the town of Culpeper, and it's the site of the 1862 Battle of Cedar Mountain. Route 15, which is a national scenic byway here, bisects the property, creating 2 distinct areas of land, both north and south of the road. It's characterized by a gently rolling topography, and it's a mix of open grass meadow and wooded cover. The American Battlefield Trust currently owns the property and acquired it in 1998, in part with grant funding from the American Battlefield Protection Program for the purpose of preserving it as a Civil War battlefield and a historic, scenic, and open space resource for the benefit of the public. The property is, as I mentioned, subject to an open space easement that's held by the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and it was recorded in 2000. The Wiseman Tract is currently improved with multiple structures and amenities associated with its use as a publicly accessible battlefield park. And there are some photos here of some of those amenities and features. This includes 2 historic cemeteries, monuments, markers, a number of informational and wayfinding signs, 9 interpretive signs, 1 Virginia highway marker, 2 local markers, trails, pedestrian bridges, metal infantry silhouettes, cannons, benches, and fences, to name among others. The property is also currently leased to the Friends of the Cedar Mountain Battlefield, group for use of a building on an adjoining property, as well as maintenance of the Wiseman tract. And that Friends group does activities such as mowing and clearing the trails, cleaning interpretive signs, removing trash and debris, and replacing split rail fencing as necessary. So the Virginia Outdoors Foundation and the American Battlefield Trust have both agreed to the assignment of the Wiseman Tract easement to the Board of Historic Resources as part of Phase 2 for this Culpeper Battlefield State Park project. The Easement Acceptance Committee also recommends that the board accept the Wiseman Tract easement assignment from the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, subject to the following condition: final review of the draft assignment and other recorded and unrecorded documents affecting title to the property by the Office of the Attorney General. Per this review, council may identify additional issues that require documentation or action. We would like to ask for you to vote separately on this proposed assignment before I move on to the next project. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So these two different scenarios, this one is an easement assignment versus easement offers under consideration. So this is one organization that currently has the easement and it's looking to transfer to our board.
Exactly. Yes. And we've done this with the Virginia Outdoors Foundation before. It's what we call a short form document. The assignment itself, it'll just keep everything the same in terms of the restrictions, just assign the holder of the easement from VOF to the board, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any further questions related to this?
No question, just that this is a very complicated set of transactions here.
Yes.
And I thank all staff who's working on it because it's going to result in something really positive, but it's a lot of steps to get there.
And we did work it out well with that first phase, so at least we have a good model now to work off of with, DCR and with the American Battlefield Trust. So I'm hoping this phase is going to go a little more smoothly since we sort of know where we want to end up now.
Great. So yes, with no further questions or comments, I'd like to, would anybody like to call for a motion to approve this easement assignment?
I would move that we approve and accept the assignment of this easement.
Great, says Mr. Tripp Pollard. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Towns. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Nobody opposed? So this easement assignment is approved as presented.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to new easement offers for consideration. I'm going to present the first project and then I'll turn it over to my colleague Kyle. And for these, I think there are 4. We will wait and ask for your vote at the end once we present all 4 projects.
Thank you.
The first item I'm going to present is a project known as Phones Cliffs Phase 3. The applicants for this project are the Rappahannock Tribe and the Conservation Fund. Located along Cliffs Road and Carter's Wharf Road in the town of Warsaw, the Phones Cliffs Phase 3 easement area contains approximately 933 acres. Rising more than 100 feet above the Rappahannock River in Richmond County, the cliffs are a geological formation comprised of a 4-mile stretch of sandstone bluffs along the river's north bank. The property is primarily an unimproved forested landscape with roughly 1 mile of river frontage. Several perennial and intermittent streams, wetland areas, archaeological sites, and various natural and wildlife habitats are also present. Before colonization, archaeological and historical evidence indicates that people inhabited this river valley well over 10,000 years ago. At the time of contact with British colonists in 1608, area 3 major towns occupied by the Rappahannock tribe and at least 43 densely populated communities. Phones Cliffs is a traditional cultural place of the Rappahannock people and is of immeasurable historic, archaeological, cultural, ecological, and spiritual significance to the tribe. The tribe retains an enduring connection to this place and the tidal landscape of the Rappahannock River. In September of 2023, DHR's evaluation committee determined that the property is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places and the Virginia Landmarks Register as part of the Fones Cliff Traditional Cultural Place at the statewide level of significance, and that was under Criterion A for ethnic heritage in the areas of Native American and Rappahannock, religion, military, and exploration and settlement. The Rappahannock tribe has initiated a Return to the River program to reacquire their ancestral homelands along Fones Cliffs. This project represents the third phase of that campaign. The prior owner of this property was Virginia True Corporation, and they had rezoned it and attempted to develop a golf resort with residential housing units. After Virginia True declared bankruptcy in 2017, a nonprofit organization known as the Conservation Fund acquired the property at auction with the goal of clearing title and conveying it to the tribe. The tribe plans to conserve the property as a natural area and use it for educational purposes befitting both the tribe and the public. They will also install permeable trails to facilitate public access. Other project partners and grant funders include the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation, and the Virginia Outdoors Foundation Preservation Trust Fund, among others. Prior to transferring fee simple title of the property to the tribe, the Conservation Fund will first convey a conservation easement to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then a historic preservation and open space overlay easement to the Board of Historic Resources on the 933 acres. Just wanted to note that although the larger property does contain roughly 968 acres, there are 3 areas of land totaling about 35 acres that will be excluded from the easements. And the tribe does expect to construct a small welcome center in one of those excluded areas that will serve as an educational facility and trailhead. The primary purpose of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service easement, which will be recorded first, is to protect fish and wildlife habitat, as well as wetland, riparian, and upland plant habitat. A secondary purpose of that easement is also to preserve and protect cultural and historic resources on the property. Since the overlay easement to our board, to you all, will be conveyed after the conservation easement is conveyed to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the overlay easement will be more limited in scope and principally focus on protection of archaeological resources, forest stewardship, maintenance of riparian buffers, and a minimum of 180 days per year of public access. Additionally, the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, who has given a grant for this project, will be a signatory to the board's overlay easement only for the purposes related to their grant and the conversion diversion provision, which is an administrative provision in the easement. Maybe before I read, well, our recommendation, the Easement Acceptance Committee is recommending acceptance of the Fones Cliffs Phase 3 easement offer by the Virginia Board of Historic Resources, subject to the following condition: final review of the title work, title commitment, survey, draft easement, and other recorded and unrecorded documents affecting title to the property by the Office of the Attorney General. Per this review, council may identify additional issues that require documentation or action. This is another layered and complicated project. So I'm happy to answer any questions. If not, staff is asking for the board's approval as presented.
Are there any questions on this particular one? No. We can move to number 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me okay in the room?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the board and welcome to our new board members. I will be presenting 3 additional easement offers for your consideration. And once I'm done, you all will be able to have your motion to vote. The first property I have for your consideration today is the Campbell's Bridge Mills Tract located in Ettrick, Virginia, along the Appomattox River. The applicant for this project is the Capital Region Land Conservancy, which acquired the property with assistance of a Virginia Land Conservation Foundation grant. Property consists of a single 3.65 acre parcel located along the Appomattox River and the North Side Canal. It adjoins an additional 34.64 acres that the Capital Region Land Conservancy placed under an easement with the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, part of which was transferred to Chesterfield County for use as a public park. The Campbell's Bridge Mills tract will also be transferred to Chesterfield County for inclusion in the park after easement recordation. Property is historically significant because it is part of the Campbell's Bridge Mill Worker Historic District, which has been determined eligible for the National Register of Historic Places and the Virginia Landmarks Register by the Department of Historic Resources. The district is defined by residential and industrial areas of Ettrick and Petersburg astride the Appomattox River. These areas are illustrative of the developing industrial economy in Virginia and nationally during the 19th century. The district retains representative architecture related to periods of industrial growth in Petersburg and Ettrick, industrial infrastructure, and associated archaeological remains, which together have the potential to provide important information about labor, class, race, and industrial development in Virginia. Property also contains a portion of an archaeological site that is contributing to the district, has been determined individually eligible for the National Register and the Virginia Landmarks Register by the department. The site includes the ruins of 4 identified mill complexes, the Eagle Mill, the Pool Mill, the Ames Grist Mill, and the Ames Plating Mill, as well as the archaeological remains of the Seward and Munt Trunk Factory. The site also includes intact infrastructure, including the North Side Canal, raceways, spillways, and water control structures, all dating to the 19th century, with further potential for archaeological remains of earlier mill complexes. Together, these components represent an incomparable archaeological resource that has the potential to provide significant information about industrial growth along the Appomattox River. And just before you advance the slides, this picture is taken from the south side of the Appomattox River, and the buildings to the rear on the north side. And you can see at least 3 of the mills in the photograph. So these pictures were taken in 1865, and the foundations of all these structures are still clearly visible on the property, which is pretty remarkable. The Easement Acceptance Committee approved the easement offer on July 29, 2024, and recommends acceptance of the easement by the Virginia Board of Historic Resources, subject to the following condition. And it's just one, final review of the title work, title commitment, survey, draft easement, and other recorded and unrecorded documents affecting titles to the property by the Office of the Attorney General. For this review, council may identify additional issues that require documentation or action. Our next property is for consideration is the Camp Holly Farm tract located in Henrico County, Virginia. Camp Holly Farm consists of 6 tax parcels totaling 138.77 acres. The applicant is the Capital Region Land Conservancy on behalf of the property owners Roland Dowdy III and Patricia Dowdy. Property is within 3 Civil War battlefields with priority ratings from the Civil War Sites Advisory Commission. Today, the property is predominantly under forested cover with approximately 30 acres in active agricultural production. Capital Region Land Conservancy will apply for American Battlefield Protection Program grant and has already been awarded a Virginia Battlefield Preservation Fund grant to assist with acquisition of the property. Conveyance of an easement to the Board of Historic Resources is a condition of these grants. The owners also intend to apply for Virginia land preservation tax credits along with federal income tax deductions for their donation. Camp Holly Farm is historically significant because it is entirely within the core of the Deep Bottom 2 battlefield, which has been given a priority 1.3 Class B rating from the Civil War Sites Advisory Committee. Priority 1 battlefields are those in critical need of action, and Class B are those having direct and decisive influence on their campaign, this being the Richmond and Petersburg campaign of 1864 to 1865. During the battle, Confederate troops under Brigadier General Dudley DuBose moved through the property to reinforce the Confederate right flank. A subsequent Confederate counterattack forced Union troops back and ultimately to withdraw across the James River. The property is also partially within the core, entirely within the study area of the Deep Bottom 2 battlefield, which has been given a priority, or Deep Bottom 1 battlefield, which has been given a priority 2.3 Class C rating by the Civil War Sites Advisory Commission, and partially within the core and study areas of the Newmarket Heights battlefield, which has been given a priority 1.3 Class C rating. Beyond the battlefield resources, Camp Holly Farms contains 2 known archaeological sites and may be associated with American encampments from the War of 1812 and Revolutionary War. Easement Acceptance Committee approved the Camp Holly Farm easement offer on October 22nd, 2024. Recommends the board approval of the easement offer subject to the following conditions. 1, prior to easement recordation, receipt of documents authorizing the deed of trust that encumbers a portion of the property to be subordinated to the easement. And 2, final review of the title work, title commitment, survey, draft easement, and other recorded and unrecorded documents affecting the title to the property by the Office of the Attorney General. For this review, council may identify additional issues that require documentation or action. Finally, today, we have the Fairfield 2 tract located in Gloucester County, Virginia. Fairfield 2 tract consists of a single 9.24 acre parcel located along Cedar Bush Road and adjacent to the 229.11 acre Fairfield tract, already protected by the board. Applicant is the Fairfield Foundation, and acquisition of the property was funded by a grant from the Virginia Outdoors Foundation Preservation Trust Fund, which requires conveyance of an easement. The Fairfield 2 tract is historically significant because it is within the Fairfield Archaeological District, which has been determined eligible for the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register of Historic Places by the Department of Historic Resources. District corresponds to the 1847 boundary of Fairfield Plantation, along with the archaeological remains of the main dwelling, outbuildings, and quarter farms associated with more than 2 centuries of occupation. Fairfield 2 tract is also associated with the post-emancipation Piney Swamp community, which was established by formerly enslaved men, women, and children from Fairfield following the Civil War. Due to its proximity to the Antioch Church, which is just across the road, I believe, the property has the potential to contain archaeological resources related to the Piney Swamp community. The Easement Acceptance Committee approved the Fairfield 2 tract easement offer on August 22nd, 2024, and recommends board approval of the easement offer subject to the following conditions. Just 1, the final review of title work, title commitment survey, draft easement, and other recorded and unrecorded documents affecting title to the property by the Office of the Attorney General. For this review, council may identify additional issues that require documentation or action. And just to note on the historical significance of this property, I think it is worth noting that much more of this should be being done in Virginia, that the association between early plantations and their post-emancipation communities, more research should be done on this. And I think Fairfield and community members down there have done a lot in drawing those links together, which bodes well for the future of historical research in Virginia. So that is all I have today. If the board has any questions on the easements I presented or that Wendy presented before me, please let us know.
Does the board have any questions about these 4 easements that were just presented? Concerns? Okay. Is there a motion to approve these easement offers for consideration as presented?
So moved by Ashley Spivey.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor of approving the easement offers for consideration, these 4 as presented? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. These easement offers for consideration are approved as presented.
Thank you. And now Megan Melanat will be presenting easement violation for you all.
Afternoon. As per our easement program policy number 7 on violations, I need to inform the board today of a violation that transpired at an easement property in Old Town Alexandria at the Powell Ablard House. The Powell Ablard House is a contributing resource in the Alexandria Historic District, named a historic landmark district in 1966. This district represents the largest concentration of 18th and 19th century urban architecture in the state. It's one of the few urban areas in the country to survive in such a way as to still convey the built environment of an early town. Property consists of a 3-bay, 3-story brick semi-detached townhouse constructed circa 1790 and an accompanying yard to the south. The house is the traditional side hall plan with a flounder and subsequent sunroom addition that was constructed in 2001 to the rear. Flounders are rear additions with a flat elevation and a single roof slope that are common throughout Old Town. At this house, a 2-story single bay wood-sided breezeway connects the main house to the flounder, and it remains a private residence that was purchased by the current owners in March of 22. On February 8th of 2024, DHR stewardship staff conducted an easement monitoring visit and discovered a violation of the 1986 deed of easement. The violation concerns the extensive modifications to the floor plan, interior finishes, and the basement. This work included the widening of existing openings between the primary living spaces, wholesale removal of the historic rear service stair, the relocation of the kitchen, excavation and extensive removal of earth to create a full head height basement level, resulting in code-required addition of 2 basement level egress windows. According to the additional information provided by the owner, permits for the work were issued by the City of Alexandria in the fall of 22. DHR was not consulted regarding the architectural modifications nor the ground disturbance associated. The owners conveyed to DHR that they were misinformed as to the purview of the easement protections during the 2022 real estate transaction. However, no contact was made with DHR to confirm their understanding. While it's unfortunate and staff does their best to stay apprised of properties likely to transfer, it is incumbent upon a property owner to conduct the necessary due diligence. Following staff review, it was clear that these actions were inconsistent with the 1986 easement held by the board. Provision 1 of the easement requires prior written approval of the grantee for alterations, additions, and improvements. Provision 2 requires the same of any construction, alteration, restoration, renovation, or extension occurring on the property to ensure consistency with the historic character of the townhouse and its setting. And provision 6 requires archaeological survey of ground disturbance or excavation at the property, as well as the completion of a summary report. After careful assessment by easement staff, because the impact to the historic interior and building fabric cannot be restored, we ask that the property owners commission the preparation of a historic structures report. The Powell Ablard House, as a contributing resource to the Alexandria Historic District, has an important history, the details of which are not all known. Such a report will formally document the changes that have transpired at the property while providing important historical context. The HSR will serve as an important preservation planning tool that will assist in the perpetual stewardship of this property moving forward. The owners have agreed to complete this documentation and are working with the historic preservation consultant over the course of the next few months. Further, the owners are aware that any future modifications to the property must be submitted to DHR for review, independent of any local requirements. They're not asking, there's no action item for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does the board have any questions?
You mentioned that all the necessary permits were issued. Does not go through the BAR in Alexandria?
Permits were issued when we asked for additional information to document the work that transpired that we were not given awareness of prior to its construction. They did include some permits from the city, and that's where we got that.
I'm just surprised in Alexandria that this didn't get flagged by somebody that this was an easement property. And
is there a way to further highlight in the next real estate transaction on this property that this indeed holds an easement?
So we have been reaching out to municipalities. We historically have had a good relationship with the city and their permitting offices, because these do show up within their records as as protected properties. And because it's not just easements held by the board, there are other easement holders in the area.
Yeah.
And so, Brad, feel free to jump in. Brad and Elizabeth have been working in sort of our high concentration areas to reach out and establish those relationships with the permitting entities in those localities so that we can just ensure better communication, at least from that standpoint, even though the onus is on the property to conduct those reviews.
Do we know of any archaeology related to the dig out of their basement at all?
Speak.
So Chair Giorgiani, ask that again.
Oh, it looks like there was a major excavation on the house.
Right, and that was one of the pieces of information that was not provided to us in a request for additional information. And at present, there is another proposal from these property owners to do some more work in the yard area for a new patio area, planting beds. In this case, have reached out to Alexandria Archaeology, and so far, and I just had a conversation with Eleanor yesterday about this. Basically, they don't have any evidence of any work happening on the property. They're still gathering information, and they're going to get some more information to us next week about what has or hasn't happened on the property. And we're thinking about conditioning our response that basically we need to see evidence of consultation and approval with the Alexandria Archaeology and any other permitting entities up there with the municipality to make sure that we're all in the same footing here.
And for future projects that
Correct.
are known.
Megan was referring to, Elizabeth Lipford and I have been reaching out to larger local municipalities where we have a lot of easements, and there is a lot of infrastructure within the municipality to, whether it's GIS mapping or, sophisticated permitting, processes. And one of the first ones we reached out to is Alexandria. And that was another thing I was speaking with Eleanor about last night. It's a broader conversation between Historic Alexandria Foundation and the city, just to make sure that first of all, they have all of our existing easements mapped up there and their existing GIS and then their planning, within their planning department, so that these specific properties that are of interest to us and you as the board are already flagged, so this doesn't happen again.
Okay. Any other questions on this? So there's no action. But...
No. All good.
Thank you. There's no action on there.
And then I just wanted to report to you the easement that has been recorded since your prior meeting. It's on the Rollins tract, just over 22 acres, and received funding from the Virginia Land Conservation Fund and the Battlefield Protection Program. Expect to have a flurry of them to report as recorded at your next meeting. Now Sarah should be up virtually.
Yes. Can everyone hear and see me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Members of the board, good afternoon. I have the honor of bringing to the board's attention our last item on the agenda, approval of the regulations concerning the contextualization of monuments or memorials for certain war veterans. Since 2022, the Board of Historic Resources, the Department of Historic Resources, and the Secretariat of Natural and Historic Resources have been working together with the goal to promulgate regulations to local government officials in relation to contextualizing certain war monuments or memorials if they so choose. These regulations will solve the problem of the current state in which there exists no guidance for localities that choose to contextualize monuments or memorials. The proposed guidance includes general provisions regarding the markers, including their appearance, location, and ownership, and the application requirements and approval process. The regulation requires that the text of the new monument includes a description of who commissioned, paid for, and created the monument or memorial, when it was erected, and what it depicts, a description of the documented reasons for the monument's or memorial's creation, a description of any documented local opposition at any time to the monument or memorial, and a description of the historical era in which the monument or memorial was erected, including information about who held political power. Finally, the design of the marker would have to be distinct from state historical markers and would have to identify the locality which funded the production. Local governments who choose to contextualize a monument or marker are required to submit an application to DHR. DHR may review the application for completeness and accuracy before presenting it to the board. As board members, then you shall then evaluate the applications and approve them, based on the following considerations: whether the proposed marker contains true and correct contextualization text, whether the proposed contextualization text provides a complete and accurate historical context, the quality and validity of the documented sources and the documented research provided, whether the proposed design is sufficiently distinct from state historical markers, and the appropriateness of the proposed location of the marker. As with our other marker programs, any changes to an existing marker would also have to be approved by the board. And if the board approves certain contextualization text and the local government wants to make a change, those changes will also have to be approved by the board. So, as an update on the process, these regulations are in the final stage of the process. I like to think of it that we're on a marathon and we're about to finish. We're on the 26th mile and I can see the finish line in sight. As you can tell, we've been doing this for 2 years now. The final text that is before you for approval and adoption has been approved by the Office of the Attorney General, the Office of Regulatory Management in Governor Youngkin's office, and has been published in the Virginia Register for public comment. In your preparation documents, you all received copies of the 3 public comments we received, none of which opposed these new regulations. Upon approval, the regulations will then be sent to the Department of Planning and Budget and the Governor's Office for one last final approval, and then hopefully will go into effect later this fall. Therefore, I ask that the Board of Historic Resources votes to approve and adopt the final text of the regulations concerning the contextualization of monuments or memorials for certain war veterans to ensure its final publication. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions by the board on this regulation? No, thank you. All right, I would like to call for a motion to approve the regulation concerning the contextualization of monuments for certain war veterans.
So moved.
Thank you, Tripp. Mr. Pollard, first and a second. Second, and Dr. Spivey, thank you. And let's see, all in favor of approving this regulation concerning the textualization of monuments for certain war veterans, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Basket on agents. Any opposed? No, I don't think he's on. All right, this regulation is approved by the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah, and for the work of the staff in this marathon. That. So I would like to call for a motion to adjourn our board meeting today. There is no further comments.
Motion moved.
So moved. Okay, Mr. Pollard, and a second by Mr. Towns. Thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Thank you, Ms. Baskett. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. Yay. Good job, everybody. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to change in 15.